I'm going to talk about the role of mathematics in decision making and societal development. Why mathematics? That's what everyone keeps on asking me. Why did I choose maths? I was brought up in a children's home, what we can call children orphanage back in Kenya. And we were around 180 children. And what would happen is that for you to progress to the next level, the children's home had preschool, where they'd teach us the first 2 years of elementary before you get to grade 1. So grade 1, we had to go to a school outside the children's home. But for you to get to grade 1, you had to touch your ear, like this. And I was short, I was tiny. For 4 years, I could not touch my ear. So what that translated to is that I stuck at K2 for 4 years without progressing. My teacher, my primary school teacher at that time, rather nursery school teacher, decided to teach me mathematics in the meantime because I had already covered all the other things that those levels required. So for 3 years, I was studying maths or numerical skills. Now, when I got to grade 1, finally I never eventually even touched my ears, they just felt pity for me. And so they let me progress. And when I got to grade 1 and I saw the maths they were doing, I asked the teacher, why are you teaching us nursery school things? She got curious, she took a maths book, and again, she continued the trend that I had been exposed to earlier. And by the time I was in grade 2, we were already finishing grade 6 maths, and we completed primary school, the 8th grade mathematics book by the time I was getting to grade 4. So all through my life, I used to think that maths is such a big joke. You know, it was so simple because every grade I got to, I had already covered that maths before. Therefore, I never struggled with the concepts. Now, when I got to high school, so primary school was really nice, but when I got to high school, my eyes got opened to the possibilities that mathematics can do. In this picture, that is my son. I had gone with him and my other children to visit the children's home I was brought up in. And so we went back so that they can see the kind of lifestyle their mother had grown up in. And at the children's home, we used to fight a lot of our resources, like food. You know, put 180 kids together with limited resources and you have them fighting for these resources. And one of the biggest resources for me was porridge. I loved porridge. Therefore, if I was to go to a setup where there are different sizes of bowls, I'd pick the biggest and the deepest. And when I got to Form 2, I discovered the quadratic equation, the dome. And my eyes just shone like I was seeing candy for the very first time. And as I observed the functions, different functions being animated, and I want to thank Mrs. Ngegi for that. She really trained me well in maths at high school. And I started seeing possibilities. I started seeing what maths can do. And I thought, finally, I have found my home. But to some extent, we can say I was pre-programmed to settle in mathematics. But at the same time, I'm happy that I found home. That is the bowl of porridge I was talking about. And as I progressed in maths, and even now when I got into actual science later, I discovered the beauty of the functions, as I said. And therefore I realized that, borrowing a quote from The Man Who Knew Infinity, the movie 2015, mathematics is a language with which the universe was created. Every time I look at people, every time I look at plants, every time I look at buildings, I see God's signature. Sorry to mention that. I see the Fibonacci sequence, the series, and I look around, I look at your faces, and all I can see is patterns. I love maths. And when you feel the excitement it brings and you see that it can add value to the society, then you try to find ways how you can use it to add value. And also the other thing that helped me to deal, rather to be able to be more helpful in the society, is to know that we are meant to survive beyond our stories. That is in the Last Thing He Wanted, the 2020 movie. So I discovered that I was not defined by what I had gone through as a child, but by what lay ahead and what I can do with what I have to bring value to the society. So what did I do? When I teach maths, one of the things I really care about is the people at the base of the pyramid. And this, of course, now is explained by my background. And every time I teach students, I always want to see how can I teach in a manner that whatever I have taught can be able to help the people at the base of the pyramid. This particular case is a woman who had a business called Her Closet Kenya. And what she used to do, she used to sell clothes just outside the university, Strathmore University in Nairobi. And she used to have an income of around 6,000 Kenya shillings a month. That is approximately around $40 a month. And this was a woman who was single, she had children, and she would try as much as possible to work with that. Now, when I started teaching a unit called Risk Theory to actual science students, or Risk Mathematics, I had them form groups, and they went outside to the women and the small businesses to work with them and give them free consultancy for financial investment and risk management. And one of the things we looked at is they had weekly meetings with these ladies. First, there was a language barrier of some sort because Strathmore University attracts very elite students. So most of them they speak English most of the time. And the ladies outside the university would speak Kiswahili, one of our national languages. And so the students had to go to that level, break very, very complex actual aspects to these ladies, say this is what I'm looking at as risk and this is how I'm going to help you, and all through. So the first week was to try to explain to the ladies what is risk and what is risk management in Kiswahili. And every week I'd meet with them and they would express their frustration. They say, oh, I had really to struggle. She does not understand English. Madam, what do I do? I said, no, this is a learning process. You have to go to her level and try to get in touch with her, because if you're not able to do that, then you're not going to be able to add value to her business. And week by week, all the way as we studied claim reserving, as we studied all the way to ruin theory, that is now where we look at the probability of a business collapsing. That is the way we looked at it. And therefore advising on how much do they need to insure their businesses, small businesses, if they were to buy insurance for their businesses. And part of it was also to explain to the ladies, and also I had to explain to my students, that risk would be, we will look at risk as anything that reduces their inflows or anything that, expected inflow, sorry, and anything that increases their expected outflow. And part of it also is, as part of risk management, they had to help these ladies grow their business, because when we're talking about reducing risk, we're talking about increasing also inflows. And boy, the students went all out. They created websites for these ladies, and these ladies first, most of them do not even have smartphones, but the students created websites. They created for them social media handles. They would take photos of their tomatoes, shiny with dew, and they would post them, and they started, all sorts of, I've seen a lot of activities, and they tried to build a brand for these ladies in the market. And this particular lady, at the end of the 4 months they interacted with my students, she moved from making around $40, that is around 6,000, to around 42,000 and above. So that is, her income went up 7 times. And in the letters she wrote later to me, she asked, can I continue working with your students? And I can pay them. And that is how I like, again, when you have to teach maths or any other subject, you have to look at it in a way that what value will I create for my student, the society first? What value will I create for the students themselves? This is feedback from one of the students where he says, our client was so satisfied by our interactions and the constant advice we gave him concerning the various areas of his business. But the last one is saying, the last sentence says, thereafter, mentioning that he would pay for future services rendered to the agency. I have been able to use mathematics and teach it in a way that at the end of the semester or at the end of the interaction with the students, you create entrepreneurs. You create students or graduates who are not, you're not only preparing them for the job market to be employees, you're preparing them to be employers. You're preparing them to be entrepreneurs. And so when I get into the classroom and I'm thinking, what can I do for these students? We will have different kind of projects. This time it will be Mama Mbogas. Mama Mboga is that street vendor. Next session will be the small businessmen who are a bit stable and so forth. And so the thing is, as you prepare this student, therefore you're also able to prepare them to be employers in the future. So when I came to the US, it was a completely different ballgame. This is because what we regard as parameters or metrics for the people at the base of the pyramid in Africa is very different from America. In Kenya, we'll be struggling probably maybe someone doesn't have something to eat in the next meal. But this particular area of the world is the land of plenty. So I kept thinking, how can I help? How can I use maths to bring positive change or to bring value to Terre Haute as a town? Through Fulbright, I am a Fulbright scholar, so I was sponsored by Fulbright. And my mentor now, with my Fulbright mentor, Professor Wayne Tarrant, we started on it, we started having conversations. And I realized what we can look at as the people who really deserve attention for me, I thought it is that child from a poor family in Terre Haute who cannot afford to pay for extracurricular activities after school or during the weekends. Why? Because if we have two families, one family is able to pay for this extracurricular activity, which goes for around $100 a season per child. So many families cannot afford to pay for that. So they have their kids at home. And now we have another family which can afford to pay for that. The kids from the house side will be prepared adequately. They will have more skills, sports skills and so forth. They will be in better position to access scholarship, even athletic scholarships and other kind of scholarship. But this other child will be disadvantaged. And yet, just by being given birth to in this particular family, it's already a disadvantage in itself. So as we continue these trends where the people who can afford to pay for extracurricular activity continue paying, and these ones cannot, then in the future generation, the gaps between the haves and the have-nots continue widening. So what we thought is, we did some stakeholders engagement. I talked to people from church, my church where I go to. We talked to the students, we talked to the neighbors. We had several conversations with our colleagues, and even had some conversations with people at ISU, to see how can we be able to solve this issue. And from it, we have written some proposals and some research grants to see how can we work together as a group, so that we can be able to try to come up with solutions for this. But the first things we're looking at is what is available. And we have schools which are idle during the weekends. They have sports facilities, can we use them? We have universities that have very robust sports program. Can we use those students in scholarship to be coaches under these programs? So we are looking at what low-hanging fruits do we have, how can we take advantage of them, and how can we create value for the society? Thank you.